Optimistic about the highly anticipated Jobs Summit taking place at Gallagher Convention today and tomorrow. This is a gathering of NEDLAC constituencies, government, labour, business and community with a focus on collaborative and high-impact interventions to drive job creation and job retention as well as economic growth. Now, the summit comes at a time when unemployment rate has reached 27.7%, with young people representing over 50%. Let's discuss this further. The Executive Chairperson of the NYDA, Sifiso Mtsweni, joins me now live in studio. So thank you very much indeed for your time. Look, it's enough about talk, isn't it? But it's fair enough to have this and bring all stakeholders. But you want something concrete at the end of the day, isn't it?
Well, I think we've been paying too much lip service on the challenges that face our country. When you talk about a job summit, it must talk about the crisis of unemployment, particularly youth unemployment out there. As you correctly put it, the majority of the people who are unemployed in this country remain young people, remain young graduates, remain a lot of young people, many of whom have now become discouraged. Discouraged job seekers, young people who just languish the streets, which really threatens the stability of our country. So as the NYDA, we really welcome this initiative, and we hope that we're not just going to sit over the next 2 days and really, compete on who can speak the best vocabulary. We want to see tangible solutions, time frames, and want to hold people accountable in terms of the decisions that will be taken. So
focused debates on specific sectors and industries is key, isn't it? What do you want? Practically, how will this work, especially for the youth?
Well, firstly, there's 3.4 million unemployed young people. Now, out of that particular high number, about 400,000 of those are actually unemployed graduates. Now, we live in a situation where we are told that young people must go in and acquire an education. They acquire an education, they come out, instead of getting jobs, there's still a barrier. Job experience, have 5 years, have 10 years experience. So one of the concrete things that we've said is that remove experience as an entrance requirement, especially for entry-level jobs. We're talking about receptionists, we're talking about administrators, we're talking about, clerks. We believe that those particular jobs don't necessarily need that 5 years experience. You deal with that, you've already dealt with 10% of the problem. But the rest of them, I mean, there's also a lot of, not necessarily certificated young people, but very skilled young people. For instance, if you go into townships, you find young people who are running their own businesses, tire businesses. Some of them are actually mechanics and so on. How do we take those particular young people, harness those particular skills, and ensure that out of them we create more jobs?
Is this what you're talking about when you talk about informal skills?
That's what we're talking about. Remember, there's also a difference between being educated and being certificated. There are those young people who are certificated. There are those young people who actually grew up within a particular environment, whether a business environment, whether an environment where actually they use their hands. I mean, we're talking plumbers, we're talking people who have actually been electricians without necessarily the certificate. What do we do with those particular young people? We think that we need to take those particular young people, harness their skills, and also ensure that they play a bigger role. But I think quite bigger. The bigger challenges, you've got a lot of young people who can't access the job market on simple things such as access to broadband, for instance, access to internet. What do we do there? I think one of the things that we will be proposing is to say lower the data costs. South Africa is one of the countries with the highest data costs in the continent and in the world. We don't have free broadband access. You go to the rest of the world, you find that Wi-Fi in all the major cities, even in smaller cities. Why are we not doing it in our country? But another important thing which I think people don't realize is that a lot of young people apply for posts, but it then becomes difficult just to transport themselves to an interview. We're also saying that let's look at ways in which we can subsidize those young people in terms of transport costs and so on.
How would that work, though?
Many companies, by the way, many companies, if you're based in another province and you call for an interview, many companies actually, make transport arrangements for you. So what we're saying is that the problem with that is that it's not a standardized system. So what we're saying is that if there's a young person staying in Soweto or in Soshanguve and there's a job interview in Pretoria, you normally take 2 or 3 taxis. Let's find a way in which we subsidize those particular young people just to get to the interview. Because sometimes we take it for granted that a young person can actually afford 50 rands just to get to the interview. These young people are unemployed. We're saying let's find a bigger basket in which we can ensure that at least these young people get a chance to be interviewed.
Okay, you're talking about tangible things that can be done for youth, but are youth taking an initiative? Do you, from your interactions with youth, do you find the zest, this will to, you know, get out there and get a job?
Well, I think it's clear for everybody to see. You wake up every morning, there's young people in street corners, there's young people in traffic lights holding placards saying that I've got a diploma, I've got a degree in this particular course, I cannot even get a course, or I cannot even get a job. Now, this has reached desperate levels. I mean, you also see some of the social ills that have taken place, young people involved in crime, in drugs. If you actually talk to them, these are young people who say, I've tried everything. There's nothing that is actually coming to me. We've got a lot of child-headed households due to a phenomenon of HIV and AIDS and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say to you is that every morning, even in our own offices, there's long lines of young people who say, we are really desperate for help. And we hope that this particular summit will take that into account, that if we cannot address this issue that is facing young people in our country is really headed for rocky waters.
But what about small businesses? I mean, would they be given a platform in this summit, or is it just about big business, big labor, and government?
Well, you would have seen that in our statement, we actually speak about SMMEs.
Yeah.
One of the challenges, look, the biggest people that can drive job creation, especially on the ground, is SMMEs. But the problem with SMMEs in the moment is that, you know, they can't access funding adequately. There's a lot of red tape. Most of the funding institutions actually operate like banks. It doesn't matter how good your business idea is. They always have to look at your credit background. Are you not blacklisted and so on? What we're saying as the NYDA is actually two things. Firstly, let's remove the red tape in terms of ensuring that SMMEs access funding. But secondly, why are we giving out loans? Why are we not giving out grants? Because a loan simply means that the business over the next 3 years is not even making profit. You have to actually service the loan. Let's find a way in which we can give out grants. We've been doing it. NYDA program, the grant program of the NYDA, is the most successful in government. We've got 68% success rate. You look at other agencies like CIFA, IDC, they've got 26%, 25% respectively. So
what's so different about yours?
What we do, a young person comes in, says, look, I've got this business idea. We test that particular business idea through our various tools. We take these young people through rigorous training in terms of ensuring that they understand how to run a business, what is a profit, what is a margin, how to open a business bank account, how to deal with issues of tax. Immediately after that, we actually appoint mentors for this particular young people. Over the next 3 years, there's a person who's experienced in business who will take them by the hand. But most importantly, we don't give out money to the young people. We assist them to buy equipment. We assist them to ensure that whatever it is that they need for the business is there. What they simply need to do is to wake up and run those particular businesses and take them forward. Just before we conclude, what sort of role will you be playing in the summit? Are you going to be given a platform to speak out? What sort of role will the NYDA play? Well, according to the program, how it is structured is that the partners that have been meeting in NEDLAC, there are certain agreements that they have reached at that level. They will come and present those particular agreements. From where we are seated as young people, we're going to study whether those particular agreements actually serve the purposes of young people. Where we feel that there are gaps, we're going to stand up and actually say that fill in those particular gaps. If they're not saying anything about job experience being removed, we're going to stand up and say put it there. If they're not saying anything about supporting local industries, reviving the textile industry on the ground, we're going to actually stand up and say do this. If there's no ring-fenced funding for SMMEs, for young owned businesses or youth-owned businesses, we want to actually stand up and raise those particular things. So from our point of view, we're looking forward to that agreement, and we're just going to add where the gaps are. Sifiso, thank you very much indeed for your time and your insight. We'll let you get going. It's a busy couple of days for you. Thank you. Sifiso Mtsweni is the chairperson of the NYDA. Let's take a bit of a break. The agenda will be back after this. Stay with us.